My daughter-in-law offered me tea with a friendly smile, but a strange smell told me not to drink it. I quietly swapped cups with her mother, and 10 minutes later, there was shouting in the house. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The phone rang while I was reviewing expense reports for a client in Wilmington. Third quarter discrepancies, the usual creative accounting that people thought I wouldn't catch. I'd been a forensic accountant for 42 years. I caught everything. Philip's name lit up my screen. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Dad, it's me. Listen, I know things have been difficult, but Deborah and I, we want to fix this. Can you come to dinner Saturday? His voice had that practiced quality, like he'd rehearsed the words in front of a mirror, too cheerful, too smooth. Saturday, at the house. The pause stretched. I heard him breathing, recalibrating. Yes, Deborah's making that pot roast you used to love. Mom's recipe. And Cynthia will be here too. Cynthia, my ex-daughter-in-law's mother. A woman who'd barely acknowledged my existence at Philip's wedding, who'd spent Thanksgiving dinners tallying my supposed inadequacies and whispered asides to Deborah. Why would she be there? Yeah, Deborah thought it would be nice. Family, you know? So, you'll come? I heard the strain underneath. 38 years I'd known that voice. First words, first lies about broken vases, first girlfriend, first heartbreak. I knew when Philip was hiding something. What time? 7. We'll see you then, Dad. This is good. Really good. He hung up quickly before I could ask questions. I set my phone down and stared at the laptop screen. Numbers blurred into patterns, connections forming the way they always did when something wasn't right. 2 years ago, Philip and Deborah had moved into my house in Overbrook. Temporary, they had said. Financial setback, just until they got back on their feet. I'd believed them because Philip was my son and you help your children. But temporary became permanent. Their furniture arrived piece by piece. My wife's armchair disappeared into the basement. Their friends filled my living room on weekends. Deborah started referring to our kitchen and our guest room, the room that had been mine for 34 years. Philip stopped meeting my eyes during conversations. 3 months ago, Deborah had suggested I might be happier in a smaller place, easier to maintain, more appropriate for a man my age. Philip had nodded along, wouldn't look at me. I'd moved out the following week, signed a lease on a sterile apartment in West Philly that smelled like other people's cooking and had walls thin enough to hear arguments through. I'd told myself I chose to leave. Now Philip wanted to reconcile, over pot roast and forced conversation, with Cynthia present. Something was wrong. I opened my banking portal, something I hadn't examined thoroughly in months. My consulting income deposited regularly. Pension payments arrived on schedule. But scanning backward through recent weeks, my eye caught irregularities. 3 ATM withdrawals, $2,800 each. Different locations across Philadelphia, all within the past 8 weeks. I hadn't made those withdrawals. My card had never left my wallet. I checked. Still there, tucked behind my driver's license where it had been for years. Someone had accessed my account. Someone who knew my PIN, who could move money in amounts small enough to avoid immediate flags. Someone who'd had access to my financial information when we all lived under the same roof. I photographed each transaction on my phone, created a folder on my desktop labeled Financial Review, March 2025. Saved PDFs of the statements, highlighted the suspicious entries in the yellow. Then I called my bank's fraud department. I'm calling to understand your process for reporting unauthorized transactions. The representative's voice brightened with procedural efficiency. Has there been fraudulent activity on your account, sir? I'm gathering information first. What documentation would I need? Police report, signed affidavit, account review with our investigative team. Thank you. I'll call back if needed. I hung up before she could ask more questions. I wasn't ready to report it yet, not until I understood what I was dealing with. My mind assembled the pattern the way it did when reviewing corporate fraud cases. Forced cheerfulness, sudden invitation after months of silence, financial irregularities, Cynthia's inexplicable inclusion. They were planning something. I needed to see it for myself. Saturday evening, I dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt. Checked my phone battery, fully charged. Slipped it into my pocket where I could access the recording function quickly if needed. The drive from my apartment to Overbrook took 18 minutes. I knew because I'd timed it unconsciously, the way you time familiar routes without meaning to. Streets I'd driven for decades now felt foreign, like traveling through someone else's neighborhood. I parked across from the house, my house. The one I'd bought in 1987 with money saved from my first accounting firm, where I'd raised Philip, buried my wife, spent 67 years of accumulated life. Lights glowed in the living room and kitchen, 3 cars in the driveway, Philip's Accord, Deborah's Lexus, an unfamiliar silver sedan, Cynthia's probably. I sat in my car for a moment, watching shadows move behind curtains. Deborah passed the front window, gesturing with her hands the way she did when organizing something. My stomach tightened. I locked the car, checked my phone one more time, and walked toward my own front door like a stranger arriving at a crime scene. I rang the doorbell, my own doorbell. But walking in unannounced felt wrong now, like trespassing. Deborah answered with a smile so bright it looked rehearsed. "Abner, come in, come in. We're so happy you came." "Deborah." I stepped inside and stopped. The entryway had been repainted, pale gray instead of the cream my wife had chosen. The console table where we'd kept mail was gone, replaced with some modern piece that looked expensive and uncomfortable. The house looks different. Just some updates, making it more homey. "Philip, your father's here." Philip emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He approached for a hug that felt obligatory, his arms barely touching my shoulders. "Dad, good to see you." "Philip." Cynthia sat in the living room, wine glass already half empty, legs crossed. She gave me a nod that barely qualified as acknowledgement. The smell of pot roast drifted from the kitchen. My wife's recipe, the one she'd perfected over 15 years, written on an index card in her careful handwriting. That detail stung more than the repainted walls. "Dinner's almost ready," Deborah announced, her voice too loud for the space. "Let's sit down." The dining room table, my table, had been set with unfamiliar placemats, 4 settings arranged with deliberate symmetry. I took the chair Deborah indicated, the one facing the kitchen doorway. Philip sat across from me. Deborah positioned herself at the head, where I used to sit. Cynthia took the remaining seat, closest to the wine bottle. Deborah served the pot roast with theatrical flourish, narrating each action. "I hope I did the recipe justice. Philip said you loved it." I nodded, said nothing. The conversation started with pleasantries that felt like an interrogation disguised as concern. "So Abner, how's the apartment working out? Is it enough space?" "It's sufficient." "Managing the bills okay? We know rent can be challenging on a fixed income." "I'm managing fine." Cynthia leaned forward, wine glass tilting slightly. "Must be hard at your age, starting over. Learning to cook for yourself again, doing your own laundry." "I've been doing my own laundry since 1976. Philip cut his pot roast into tiny pieces, fork scraping against plate in rhythmic intervals. His eyes stayed down, focused on his food with unusual intensity. When I mentioned my consulting work was steady, he glanced at Deborah. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Deborah smiled and steered the conversation again. "Philip and I were just talking about how important it is to have things in order. You never know what can happen." She dabbed her mouth with her napkin. "A friend of mine from book club, her father died without a will. Intestate, they call it. Such a mess for the family. Took years to sort out." My forensic instinct screamed. This wasn't subtle. This was reconnaissance. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of, Dad." Philip's voice sounded hollow. The irony wasn't lost on me. Cynthia nodded along, glass now empty. "Deborah's right. At our age, we have to think about these things, get everything documented." "My affairs are in order." "But when was the last time you reviewed it?" Deborah pressed. "Things change. Philip should know your wishes, as your only child." "Philip knows everything he needs to know." I kept my response deliberately ambiguous, watching them process the statement. Deborah's smile tightened. Philip's fork paused mid-cut. After dinner, Deborah waved away my offer to help clear the table. "You relax, you're our guest." But I persisted, standing and gathering my plate, following Philip toward the kitchen. I wanted to observe, to hear. Deborah and Cynthia stood near the sink, voices low. Philip loaded the dishwasher with mechanical precision, not looking at me. I positioned myself near the pantry, partially obscured by the open door, setting plates down slowly. Then I heard it. Deborah's voice, quiet but clear. After this, everything will be ours. 1 week, maximum. My hands stopped moving. Cynthia responded, "You're sure about the dose? No mistakes?" "Mother, I've researched this for months. It'll look natural. Old man, heart problems, no one questions it." The room tilted. My hand gripped the counter edge. 1 week. They'd given me 1 week to live. The dinner wasn't reconciliation. It was reconnaissance. Checking if I'd updated my will, how isolated I was, whether anyone would investigate. Philip appeared in the doorway. For a split second, our eyes met. He saw me standing there, saw something in my expression. Did he know I'd heard? I turned away immediately, picked up plates with steady hands I didn't feel, kept my face neutral. "Dad, you okay?" "Fine. Just looking for where you keep the trash bags now." My voice came out remarkably controlled. I walked back to the living room, my mind racing. Every instinct said, run, call the police. But I'd spent 4 decades building fraud cases. I knew overheard conversation wasn't enough. I needed proof, documentation, evidence that would hold up. Deborah offered me coffee. I accepted it, noting which cup she handed me, then pretended to sip without actually drinking. Watched her satisfied expression. Cynthia's confident posture. Philip's trapped, guilty face. My son knew. My son was complicit in planning my murder. But Deborah was running this operation. Philip was just the weak link she'd manipulated into position. I should head back. Long drive. It was 15 minutes. Deborah stood quickly. "So soon? We barely had time to catch up." "We'll do this again." The lie tasted metallic. "Dad, I'll walk you out." Philip moved toward the door. "No need. I remember the way." I left before they could insist, before my control could crack. Got to my car, started the engine, pulled away from the curb. But I didn't drive home. I wasn't ready to be still yet, to face the silence of my apartment with this knowledge burning through my thoughts. My hands gripped the steering wheel as my mind assembled the pieces. 1 week, a dose, heart problems, everything will be ours. They'd made one mistake. They'd given me time. The second invitation came on Tuesday. Deborah's voice through the phone, bright and insistent. "Let's make this a regular thing. Saturday dinner, weekly, rebuild our bond properly." I'd agreed because I needed to see what came next. Saturday arrived again. 1 week since I'd overheard their plan, 1 week they'd given me to live. I drove to Overbrook in late afternoon light, phone fully charged, mind running through contingencies like reviewing audit procedures. Same setup. Deborah answered the door with her theatrical warmth. Philip emerged from the kitchen with that trapped animal expression. Cynthia occupied the living room sofa, with wine already in hand. Dinner passed in forced conversation about weather and Philadelphia road construction. I tasted each bite carefully, nothing unusual. My senses stayed hyper-alert, tracking their movements, their glances. They were waiting for something. The right moment. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Deborah stood suddenly. "I'll make tea. That special blend you used to love, Abner. Remember?" I didn't remember any special blend, but I nodded. She disappeared into the kitchen. I heard cabinet doors, water running, the electric kettles click. Philip scrolled through his phone, thumb moving in mechanical rhythm. Cynthia examined her fingernails. Nobody spoke. Deborah returned carrying a wooden tray. 4 delicate china cups, steam rising in curls. The cups matched, white porcelain with thin gold rims, part of a set my wife had received as a wedding gift decades ago. Seeing them hurt in an unexpected way. "This one's for you, Abner. I made it extra strong, just how you like it." She handed me the cup personally, fingers brushing mine, warm ceramic against my palms. I brought it toward my face naturally, as though inhaling the aroma. That's when I caught it, beneath the bergamot, beneath the regular tea smell, something else, faint, bitter, distinctive, bitter almonds. My forensic training had included toxicology basics. Cyanide carries that scent, though only about 40% of people can detect it genetically. I discovered years ago that I could, during a fraud investigation involving an insurance death claim. My heart rate spiked. My hands stayed perfectly steady. I set the cup on the side table beside my chair, made conversation about my apartment's unreliable hot water. Cynthia set her cup, identical to mine, on her own side table, Complained about the house always feeling drafty, despite Philip's assurances about the heating system. Deborah watched me, waiting. "Try it, Abner. Tell me if it's good." "Give it a moment to cool," I said. "Too hot right now?" She smiled, satisfied, patient. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, irritation flashing across her features. "My realtor. I have to take this. Potential buyer for the Chestnut Street property." She stepped toward the hallway, voice already shifting into business mode. Simultaneously, Cynthia stood. "Bathroom," she announced, moving toward the powder room off the kitchen. Philip remained seated, eyes locked on his phone screen, scrolling through something that held his complete attention. 5 seconds, maybe less. My cup sat on my side table. Cynthia's cup sat on hers, 3 feet away, identical in every way, both still steaming, both positioned at the same angle. I moved smoothly, picked up both cups, switched their positions, set them down precisely as they had been. My pulse hammered so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it through the walls. Deborah's voice drifted from the hallway. "Yes, but they need to understand the property value reflects recent comparable sales." Cynthia returned, settled back onto the sofa without glancing at the cups. Deborah came back, phone tucked away, expression refocused. "Now then, where were we?" She looked at me expectantly. I lifted the cup, Cynthia's unpoisoned one, to my lips. Let the liquid barely touch my mouth. Made a swallowing motion. Set it down. "Excellent. You always had a talent for tea." The lie tasted like metal. Deborah's smile widened. "I'm so glad you like it." Cynthia reached for her cup, my original poisoned one, and took a long drink. "This is quite good, dear. A bit bitter, but interesting." She drank more. Philip sipped his mechanically, eyes still on his phone. Deborah watched me over the rim of her cup. I tracked the seconds internally, made conversation about apartment plumbing, how the superintendent never answered calls promptly. Safe, boring topics that required minimal attention. 5 minutes passed, 7 minutes. Cynthia drained her cup, set it down. "Getting cold. I should have drunk it faster." 8 minutes, 9. My palms sweated. I kept my voice level, discussing garbage collection schedules with manufactured concern. 10 minutes. Cynthia reached for her throat. Her breathing changed, shallow, rapid. "I feel..." The sentence died incomplete. Her hand moved to her stomach. Color drained from her face, then flooded back in unnatural flush. "Mother?" Deborah's voice carried sharp concern. Cynthia tried standing. Her legs buckled. She grabbed the sofa arm for support. "Something's wrong. I can't..." The words slurred together. Then pain hit her. I watched it travel across her features, shock, then agony. She gasped, a horrible rasping sound that filled the room. She collapsed to her knees, started screaming, raw, primal. The sound humans make when their bodies betray them fundamentally. Her body convulsed. Deborah rushed over, hands hovering uselessly, confusion transforming into fear. "Mother! What's happening? Mother!" Philip's phone clattered to the floor. He stared, frozen, mouth open. Cynthia screamed again, doubled over, vomited onto the carpet, violent, uncontrollable heaving. "Help her!" Deborah shouted at no one and everyone. "Someone help her!" Philip scrambled for his phone, fingers shaking, dialing emergency services. I stood, moved closer but didn't help. I observed. Cynthia's convulsions intensified. Foam appeared at her lips. Her fingernails clawed at the carpet. The room reeked of sickness and terror. I watched Deborah's face, saw the exact moment understanding began, incomplete but growing. Her eyes moved from her mother to the empty teacup on the side table, then to me. Philip's voice shook as he spoke to the emergency operator, giving our address, describing symptoms he couldn't comprehend. Deborah knelt beside her mother, and I saw it in her eyes, the dawning horror of a plan gone terribly wrong. Cynthia's screams tore through the house. Deborah pressed hands against her mother's shoulders, helpless. Philip stammered into his phone. "She's convulsing. She can't breathe. Please hurry." I moved closer to Deborah, leaned down, spoke low enough that only she could hear beneath Cynthia's anguished sounds. "Perhaps it's the tea she drank, the tea that was meant for me." My voice came out flat, factual, like reading numbers from a ledger. Deborah's head snapped toward me, our eyes locked. 3 seconds. Her face showed everything. Shock rippling into horror, comprehension crashing through denial, then desperate calculation trying to rebuild control. She knew that I knew. I knew that she knew I knew. "What are you?" she started. "The ambulance," I said louder, for Philip's benefit. "How long did they say?" My tone shifted. Concerned grandfather, nothing more. But I held Deborah's gaze. Let her see the steel there, the absolute certainty. She broke eye contact first, turned back to Cynthia, whose body jerked with another violent spasm. But Deborah's hands were shaking now. Philip kept the operator connected. 5 minutes? They said 5 minutes. Deborah stood abruptly. "I need water." "She needs water." She moved toward the kitchen. Quick, purposeful strides that barely concealed panic. I counted to 3. Followed. In the kitchen, Deborah stood at the sink. Running water, soap. Her hands worked frantically, scrubbing a teacup. My original cup. The poison one I'd switched. She didn't hear me enter at first. "That won't help." She spun. Water dripped from the cup still clutched in her hands. "I'm just cleaning up. I didn't—" "You're destroying evidence," I corrected. "My cup. The one you poisoned. The one Cynthia drank from instead." Her face went white, bone white. "You're insane. You don't know what you're saying. Mother is sick and you're making these—" "Attempted murder," I finished, "which became actual harm when your own mother drank poison you intended for me." Outside, sirens grew louder. Deborah set the cup down carefully, nearly dropped it. Her lips moved but produced no sound. I walked back to the living room. 2 paramedics burst through the door, male and female, moving with practiced efficiency. They assessed Cynthia immediately, checking vitals, examining pupils, evaluating breathing patterns. "What did she ingest?" the female paramedic demanded. Everyone spoke at once. She held up one hand. "One person only. You, sir." She pointed at me. I was the calmest person in the room. "We had tea," I said clearly. "Approximately 15 minutes ago. She consumed an entire cup. Within 10 minutes these symptoms appeared." "What kind of tea?" "I don't know the specific blend. My daughter-in-law prepared it." I gestured toward Deborah, who'd returned from the kitchen. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Was it herbal? Did it smell unusual?" "It had a bitter quality, underneath the regular tea smell." The paramedics exchanged glances, professional recognition passing between them. "Bitter almonds?" the male asked. I paused as though considering. "Perhaps. Yes, that's accurate." The female paramedic spoke into her radio. "Possible cyanide exposure, patient priority red. Notify receiving hospital to prepare antidote protocol." They moved fast. Oxygen mask. IV line started. Cynthia loaded onto the stretcher, body still jerking with spasms. While they worked, I moved around the room, pulled out my phone, made it look like anxious texting, worried family members seeking support. Actually, I photographed everything. Click. The remaining teacups on side tables, positions clearly visible. Click. The wooden tray on the coffee table. Click. The kitchen doorway where Deborah had attempted evidence destruction. Click. Deborah's face, guilt etched into every feature. Click. Philip's shocked expression. Phone still in his trembling hand. Quick, subtle, professional documentation. I moved to the kitchen while everyone focused on Cynthia being secured to the stretcher. The trash can yielded the teabag wrapper. I used a napkin to retrieve it without direct contact. Slipped it into my jacket pocket. Back to the living room. Cynthia's cup, the poisoned one, now empty, sat where she'd dropped it. I used another napkin, picked it up, set it carefully on the mantel. "For the hospital," I said to the room generally. "They might want to test it." Deborah looked like she might vomit. "Family can follow in your own vehicle," the female paramedic said. "She's stable for transport, but remains critical." Deborah grabbed her purse, keys. "Philip, come on!" Philip stood frozen. "Dad, are you—" "I'll stay," I said. "Clean up here. Follow shortly." Deborah started to protest. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't want me alone with evidence, but the paramedic was already pushing the stretcher toward the door. "We need to go now," the paramedic emphasized. They left, Deborah, Philip, the paramedics with Cynthia. Sirens faded into Philadelphia's nighttime noise. The house went quiet. I stood in my former living room, a crime scene only I recognized as such. 10 minutes, maybe 15 before they might return, or think to call and check on me. I worked methodically, photographed everything from multiple angles, the teacup positions, the tray, the kitchen sink where Deborah had scrubbed evidence, the remaining liquid in the other cups, found the tea canister in the kitchen cupboard, some specialty blend with a handwritten label, photographed the label, used a plastic sandwich bag to collect a sample, sealed it carefully, checked the trash again, found napkins Deborah had used earlier, potentially her fingerprints, potentially useful for comparison, bagged those too, sent all photos to my email, creating backup documentation outside my phone. Finally, I called my attorney, Alan Shaw, someone I'd worked with on business matters for 20 years. His emergency number went to voicemail after 2 rings. Alan, this is Abner Gordon. I need you first thing Monday morning. Attempted murder case. I'm the intended victim. I have extensive documentation. This is urgent. Call me immediately when you get this message. I checked the time. Almost 2 hours since Cynthia had collapsed. I walked through the house one final time. My house. Every room held memories. Philip's childhood, my wife's presence, decades of accumulated life. They'd tried to take it all, tried to take me. Instead, they'd poisoned themselves, metaphorically and literally. I collected my evidence, checked that nothing was missing, turned off lights in the kitchen and living room, leaving only the hallway light burning, locked the front door behind me, still had my key despite everything. The night air hit cold and clean. My car sat where I'd parked it, ordinary and patient. I drove away slowly, carefully, pockets full of evidence, phone full of photographs, mind full of plans. In the distance, sirens still wailed. Philadelphia never really sleeps, neither would I. Not until this was finished. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain, 3 days since the poisoning. I drove to the police station on Hunting Park Avenue, parking in the visitor lot beside patrol cars and unmarked sedans. Detective Craig Holmes met me in an interrogation room. Sparse gray walls, recording equipment mounted in the corner, fluorescent lights humming overhead. He was mid-40s, methodical expression, skeptical by profession. Mr. Gordon, thank you for coming in. I understand Saturday night was traumatic. I settled into the metal chair across from him. It was eventful. The hospital confirmed Mrs. Reynolds ingested ethylene glycol, antifreeze, potentially lethal dose. He watched my face carefully. We're treating this as attempted murder. Someone attempted murder, I agreed, just not on her. Holmes leaned back. Walk me through the evening, everything you remember. I did. Chronologically, precisely. The way I'd present findings in a fraud deposition. The dinner invitation, who prepared the tea, the specific cup handed to me, the bitter almond scent I'd detected. You're very detailed, Holmes observed. Forensic accountant. Details are my profession. I'm trained to observe and document. And you believe this tea was meant for you? I don't believe, detective. I know. I opened the folder I'd brought, slid photographs across the table, cup positions on side tables, the tea tray, the kitchen where Deborah had been washing dishes during the medical emergency. I collected these Saturday night after the ambulance left. Holmes's expression sharpened. You collected evidence from a potential crime scene? My house, my property. And yes, I preserved what I could before it disappeared. I produced more items, the teabag wrapper in a plastic bag, napkins that might carry fingerprints, photos of Deborah's stricken face when I'd accused her in the kitchen. My daughter-in-law washed one cup while paramedics were working, the cup originally given to me. Why would someone wash dishes during a medical emergency? Holmes examined everything silently. Minutes passed. He picked up one photograph, set it down, picked up another. You switched the cups. Statement, not question. I considered my response. I suspected something was wrong with mine. I made a choice to protect myself. To let Mrs. Reynolds drink poison instead? I didn't poison anyone, detective. I protected myself from a threat I perceived as real. Mrs. Reynolds drank from a cup not intended for her. That's a fine distinction, Mr. Gordon. It's the only distinction that matters. I'm the intended victim, not the perpetrator. Holmes studied me, calculating, evaluating credibility. Tell me why they'd want you dead. I explained the situation. Philip and Deborah living in my house for 2 years, claiming financial hardship. The gradual takeover of my space, my forced move 3 months ago. Then the dinner 1 week before the poisoning. The overheard conversation. Everything will be ours, 1 week maximum. I showed him my bank statements, highlighting the suspicious ATM withdrawals I'd discovered. $2,800, 3 times over 8 weeks. I didn't make those withdrawals. They had access to my financial information when we lived together. Holmes took notes, pen scratching paper rhythmically. This evidence you collected? Why not call us immediately Saturday night? Mrs. Reynolds was fighting for her life. My son and his wife were at the hospital. What would I have reported that wouldn't have sounded like an unhinged accusation? I wanted to ensure evidence was preserved for proper investigation when you inevitably became involved. Holmes closed his notebook, tapped his pen against it 3 times. Mr. Gordon, you're either a very careful man or a very calculating one. Both, detective. I've had to be. He stood. We'll need to interview your son and daughter-in-law. Don't leave town. And Mr. Gordon, next time you suspect attempted murder, call us first. I sincerely hope there isn't a next time. 2 days later, Wednesday afternoon, I sat in Alan Shaw's downtown office. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, diplomas from Penn Law arranged on one wall. Shaw was early 50s, experienced lines around his eyes, expensive suit that spoke of successful practice. Mr. Gordon, I got your emergency message. You mentioned attempted murder? I presented everything. The police investigation, the collected evidence, my suspicions about financial fraud beyond the unauthorized withdrawals. Shaw listened, making notes on a yellow legal pad. You need both criminal and civil representation. I handle the civil side, property, assets, fraud claims. The criminal case is the district attorney's responsibility. He reviewed my bank statements. These withdrawals, you didn't authorize them? Never. I keep detailed records. Those aren't mine. His expression hardened. Power of attorney fraud. If they forged your signature, that's felony fraud and elder abuse under Pennsylvania law. He pulled up his computer, typed rapidly. Let's start with property records. Who's on the deed to your house? 30 minutes of searching revealed troubling information. Shaw's jaw tightened visibly. Mr. Gordon, they filed a quitclaim deed attempt 2 months ago. Tried to transfer partial ownership to themselves. Fortunately, it requires notarization, and your signature was flagged as potentially fraudulent by the title company. It's in contested status. The air left my lungs. They'd tried to steal my house legally while planning to kill me. Shaw spread documents across his desk. This isn't family drama. This is systematic elder exploitation. He outlined strategy. First, revoke any legitimate powers of attorney you granted. Second, freeze all accounts where they have access. Third, file for emergency eviction based on fraud and creating an unsafe environment. Fourth, pursue civil damages for financial harm. How long for eviction? 30 to 60 days if we push aggressively. Financial freezes? I can start tomorrow. Shaw paused, pen hovering over paper. I need to ask, do you want reconciliation with your son, or do you want justice? I thought of Philip's face at dinner, knowing poison was being served, saying nothing, doing nothing. Justice. Then we proceed aggressively. This will destroy your relationship with them. They destroyed it when they tried to kill me. Shaw nodded once. Fair enough. I'll need you to sign several documents, provide full financial disclosure, and write a detailed timeline of events. Can you do that? I'm a forensic accountant, Mr. Shaw. Documentation is what I do best. I left Shaw's office as afternoon turned to evening, Philadelphia's streetlights flickering on, one by one. In my briefcase, signed authorizations, revocation documents, eviction filings ready for court. They'd tried to take everything from me. Now I was taking it back, legally, methodically, irreversibly. 2 weeks passed. Early May brought warmer weather and the first phase of counterattack. Friday morning, First Philadelphia Bank, downtown branch. I sat with Shaw and a bank manager named Patricia Wells, professional demeanor, efficient keystrokes, no unnecessary sympathy. Spread before us. Account statements, power of attorney revocations, court orders bearing Judge Morrison's signature. These are all accounts where Philip Gordon or Deborah Gordon have access, I said. I'm revoking all authorizations effective immediately. Mrs. Wells typed rapidly. Each keystroke cut another lifeline. Joint checking account ending in 3847, frozen. Savings account ending in 9201, frozen. Investment access revoked. Credit cards were your primary and their authorized users. Canceled. Shaw added, "We're placing fraud alerts on Mr. Gordon's credit. Any attempt to open new accounts or lines of credit in his name will require his physical presence and 2 forms of identification." Click, click, click. The sound of financial doors slamming shut. Total access removed from 8 accounts, Mrs. Wells confirmed. Combined balances of $127,000. Money I'd worked 40 years to save. Money they'd been bleeding like a slow leak I'd been too trusting to notice. Shaw pulled up his laptop. "I obtained their credit reports through legal channels. You're listed as a creditor due to the fraudulent power of attorney attempt." He turned the screen toward me. Numbers scrolled past, like an indictment. Philip, $31,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards. Deborah, $36,000 across 8 cards. Joint personal loan, $15,000, 3 months behind on payments. I stared. I estimated maybe $40,000 total. There's more. Shaw clicked another document. They took a second mortgage on their previous house before selling it, never paid it off. That's another $43,000 in debt collection. Total combined debt, approximately $125,000. The number hit like a physical blow. And their income, Shaw continued. Philip's salary, $78,000 annually. Deborah's real estate commissions, roughly $45,000 last year, but down to $12,000 this year. They're underwater, Mr. Gordon, drowning financially. Your house and your money were their only escape route from bankruptcy. The motive crystallized completely. Not just greed, desperation. We moved to the courthouse. Shaw handed me a thick stack of papers. Emergency eviction petition based on 1. Fraud and misrepresentation to gain occupancy. 2. Financial exploitation of elderly household member. 3. Creating an unsafe living environment related to ongoing criminal investigation. He passed forms to the clerk. Official stamps descended. Filed. Pennsylvania law allows expedited hearings in elder abuse cases. We're requesting 2 weeks instead of standard 30 days. Judge Morrison is assigned. She's tough on exploitation. The clerk handed back copies. They'll be served within 48 hours, 7 days to respond or vacate. I signed final authorizations. My house. They'd invaded it, occupied it, nearly stolen it. Now I was reclaiming it with court authority behind me. We exited the courthouse into spring sunshine. Across the street, near a coffee shop, Philip and Deborah. Pure chance. Terrible timing. Deborah saw us first. She stormed over, Philip trailing like a reluctant shadow. "What have you done?" Her voice shrill enough to turn heads. "My cards don't work. The bank says you froze everything. That's our money." Shaw stepped forward. "Mrs. Gordon, I'm Mr. Gordon's attorney. Please direct all communication through legal channels." She ignored him completely. "You can't do this. We live in that house. We have rights." "You have no rights," I said quietly. "You tried to murder me. You committed financial fraud. You forged documents. You have exactly 0 rights to anything of mine." Philip finally spoke. "Dad, please, we can talk about this. It's all a misunderstanding." "Which part? The poison or the forged power of attorney?" People were watching. Philip's face went white. Deborah's calculations shifted visibly. She lowered her voice, tried different tactics. "We can work this out. Family, we're family, aren't we? You stopped being my family when you served me poison tea." Shaw interceded. "Mr. Gordon, let's go. Don't engage further." We walked away. Behind us, Deborah's voice rose again, cursing loudly enough that pedestrians gave her space. Shaw muttered, "That'll look great when we present it to Judge Morrison." Late afternoon, my apartment phone rang. Detective Holmes. "Mr. Gordon, development in your case. Mrs. Reynolds is conscious and coherent. We interviewed her this morning." I waited. "She was informed that the poison was intended for you, not her. According to hospital toxicology analysis and your testimony about switching cups." Holmes paused significantly. "She's changed her story. Initially, she supported her daughter's claims of accidental contamination, some story about old containers being mislabeled. Now she states she overheard Deborah and Philip discussing getting rid of you several weeks ago. She didn't think they were serious until she woke up in the hospital. My hand tightened on the phone. She's willing to testify? Against her own daughter. Yes, she's furious. Quote, "My daughter almost killed me trying to kill him for money. I won't protect that." Holmes continued, "With her testimony, physical evidence, and your documentation, we're building a strong case. District Attorney will likely file charges within the month. Attempted murder, conspiracy, reckless endangerment." "Thank you, Detective." After hanging up, I stood at my apartment window. Evening traffic streamed through Philadelphia's streets, red taillights flowing like blood through veins. Cynthia Reynolds, who'd sat in my living room with disdain dripping from every word, who'd been complicit in planning my murder, was now testifying against her own daughter, not from conscience, from self-preservation. She'd been the unintended victim and couldn't forgive that. I didn't need her forgiveness. I just needed her testimony, my accounts secured, my house being reclaimed, their debt exposed, Cynthia's testimony locked in. The first strike had landed precisely as planned. But this was only the beginning. 3 weeks passed. Late May brought warmer weather and a legal envelope that changed everything. Tuesday afternoon, I sat at my dining table sorting mail, bills, advertisements, credit card offers I'd been declining for years. Then the envelope from Brennan and Associates, a law firm I recognized for aggressive tactics and questionable ethics. Inside, a petition for guardianship and conservatorship. Philip Gordon, petitioner, seeks appointment as guardian over Abner Gordon, respondent, due to alleged cognitive impairment and inability to manage financial affairs. The words blurred. My son. My own son claiming I was mentally incompetent. The petition listed evidence, forgetfulness, confusion about recent events, poor financial decisions, isolation from family, paranoid accusations against relatives. Each line distorted reality. My careful documentation became obsessive behavior. My apartment became proof of inability to maintain his home. My fraud allegations became paranoid delusions about family theft. Court date, July 7th. 3 weeks away. My hands shook. The first time since this began. Not from fear, from rage so pure it felt like electricity through my bones. They'd tried poison. Now they'd try to destroy my credibility, my autonomy, my very mind. The phone calls started the next day. Margaret Chen, a colleague from my forensic accounting days. "Abner, I heard from Deborah that you've been having difficulties, memory issues. She seemed very concerned about you." Her tone carried careful pity. "Margaret, they tried to poison me. There's a police investigation. This guardianship petition is retaliation." "That sounds quite elaborate, Abner. Are you sure you're remembering everything correctly? Sometimes as we age, I have documentation, police reports, attorney representation. Does that sound like dementia?" Uncomfortable pause. "I hope you're getting proper help, Abner. I am, from lawyers, not caregivers." She made excuses, ended the call quickly. Then Robert Walsh from my consulting network. "Someone mentioned you're involved in family legal issues, competency questions. I'm afraid we'll need to pause your contract until this resolves. Liability concerns." They were believing her. Deborah was systematically poisoning every professional relationship I had. I called Shaw. "She's found a psychiatrist willing to testify I have dementia. Dr. Marcus Brenner. Ever heard of him?" Typing sounds. "Brenner, interesting. He had privileges suspended in New Jersey 3 years ago for providing favorable evaluations in exchange for payment. He's borderline fraudulent." She paid him. "Undoubtedly. We can discredit him thoroughly." That evening, I sat alone. The apartment felt smaller, emptier than usual. I was 67 years old. My son wanted me declared incompetent. Former colleagues doubted my mind. People I'd worked with for decades questioned my judgment. For perhaps 5 minutes, a thought crept in. What if they're right? What if my judgment is impaired and I can't recognize it? I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. Old man, alone, fighting his own family. Then my training reasserted itself. I deal in facts, not feelings. Fact. I successfully identified financial fraud through detailed analysis. Fact. I collected admissible evidence that police accepted. Fact. I navigated complex legal processes without confusion. Fact. I detected poison and executed a successful defensive strategy under pressure. These aren't actions of someone with dementia. My mind is sharp. They're trying to make me doubt myself. It won't work. Next morning, I began systematic documentation of my competency. First appointment, Dr. Rachel Okonkwo, neuropsychologist at Penn Medicine. 4 hours of comprehensive cognitive testing. Memory, reasoning, executive function, problem solving, spatial awareness. She reviewed results with professional precision. Mr. Gordon, your scores place you in the superior range for your age group. Memory is excellent. Executive function is strong. No indication of cognitive impairment whatsoever. She provided a detailed written report. 17 pages of test results, percentile rankings, clinical observations. Second appointment, Dr. James Patterson, geriatric psychiatrist. 2-hour interview covering mental status, mood, judgment, daily functioning, decision-making capacity. You're cognitively intact, Mr. Gordon. No evidence of dementia, delirium, or impaired decision-making capacity. Your financial and legal actions demonstrate excellent judgment under difficult circumstances. Another comprehensive report. Third appointment, Dr. Sarah Kim, general physician. Complete medical workup, blood tests, brain imaging, neurological exam. Excellent health for 67. Blood pressure normal, no neurological concerns. MRI shows age-appropriate brain structure with no abnormalities. 3 independent doctors, 3 unequivocal conclusions. Completely competent. I met with Shaw, bringing all medical reports. He reviewed them with visible satisfaction. This is bulletproof. 3 independent specialists, comprehensive testing, no conflicts of interest. Their hired psychiatrist against our 3 legitimate doctors? No contest. We prepared strategy. Shaw would subpoena Dr. Brenner's disciplinary records from New Jersey. We'd present my recent consulting work, complex financial analyses requiring sophisticated cognition. We'd demonstrate my successful evidence collection and legal navigation. They're arguing you're incompetent while you're simultaneously outsmarting them legally, Shaw observed. The contradiction is fatal to their case. I want to testify, I said. I want to explain everything directly to the judge. Shaw hesitated. Risky. Opposing counsel will try to trip you up, make you seem confused or disoriented. Let them try. I've given expert testimony in fraud cases for 20 years. I know how to handle cross-examination. Shaw nodded slowly. Then we prepare you thoroughly, make you unshakable. We spent the next 2 weeks rehearsing, anticipated questions, hostile scenarios, pressure tactics designed to confuse or fluster. Shaw played aggressive opposing counsel, attacking every statement, questioning every memory. By the court date, I had mastered every answer. Shaw closed his trial notebook, satisfied with our preparation. You'll do well on the stand. I didn't respond, just gathered my medical reports, 3 thick folders documenting my competence. The hearing was in 2 days. They'd tried to paint me as a confused old man. I'd show them exactly how sharp my mind remained. Thursday morning, July 7th. Courtroom 4B, Philadelphia Family Court. I arrived with Shaw at 8:30 for the 9 o'clock hearing. The courtroom was formal, dark wood paneling, Pennsylvania, state seal behind the bench, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. Judge Patricia Morrison presiding, late 50s, reputation for being tough but fair on elder abuse cases. Philip and Deborah sat with their attorney, Marcus Webb. Young, aggressive, desperation showing around his eyes. This case mattered to him, probably financially. Judge Morrison reviewed the petition with sharp attention. This is a guardianship petition filed by Philip Gordon concerning his father, Abner Gordon, age 67. She looked directly at me, assessing. I met her gaze steadily. Shaw stood. Your Honor, this petition is retaliatory. Mr. Philip Gordon and his wife face criminal charges for attempted murder and financial fraud against the respondent. This guardianship claim is a transparent attempt to discredit the victim. Webb objected immediately. Baseless accusations. My clients are concerned about an elderly man making erratic decisions, accusing family members of imaginary crimes. Judge Morrison raised one hand. I'm aware of the ongoing police investigation. Continue, Mr. Shaw. The battle lines were drawn. Shaw called Dr. Rachel Okonkwo as first witness. She took the stand, credentials impeccable, 20 years at Penn Medicine, dozens of publications, expert in cognitive assessment. Shaw walked her through my evaluation. I administered comprehensive neuropsychological testing, memory, executive function, reasoning, problem solving. Mr. Gordon scored in the superior range for his age cohort. She presented test results, percentile rankings, numbers that spoke louder than opinions. In my professional opinion, Mr. Gordon shows no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or diminished capacity. His performance demonstrates intact higher-order cognition. Webb cross-examined. Doctor, couldn't someone with early dementia still perform well on structured tests? Not at this level of sophistication. Mr. Gordon's performance requires robust mental capacity that early dementia would degrade. Webb tried another angle. Could stress cause someone to seem competent when they're actually impaired? Dr. Okonkwo's response was measured, devastating. Stress doesn't create superior cognitive performance. If anything, it reveals deficits. Mr. Gordon is functioning at a high level under extraordinary stress. That demonstrates robust mental capacity, not impairment. Dr. Patterson testified next, then Dr. Kim. 3 independent experts, unanimous conclusions. Judge Morrison took notes throughout, expression unreadable. Shaw called me to the stand. I was sworn in, settled into the witness chair, with composure developed through decades of expert testimony. This was familiar territory, presenting facts, defending analysis, maintaining credibility under pressure. Shaw led me through the narrative chronologically, the overheard conversation, the poisoned tea, the cup switch, evidence collection, discovering the financial fraud. I spoke clearly, precisely. I noticed unauthorized withdrawals totaling $8,400. When I investigated, I found a forged power of attorney dated February 15th, 2 months before the poisoning incident. I referenced dates, account numbers, specific amounts without consulting notes, my memory on full display. Then Webb's cross-examination. Mr. Gordon, isn't it true you've become isolated from friends and family? I moved out after discovering financial fraud. That's prudent self-preservation, not social dysfunction. You claim your son tried to murder you. Doesn't that sound extreme? The police investigation and toxicology report support my claim. It's documented fact, not delusion. Webb pushed harder. At your age, couldn't you simply be confused about certain events? I'm 67, counselor, not 97. My age doesn't diminish my ability to recognize attempted murder. Light laughter from the gallery. Webb's frustration showed in his reddening neck. He tried several more angles. I deflected each one calmly, factually. After 20 minutes, he gave up. No further questions. Webb called his expert, Dr. Marcus Brenner. Older man, nervous energy, too eager smile. He testified about concerning signs based on Philip's descriptions of my behavior. Shaw's cross-examination was surgical. Dr. Brenner, you never actually examined Mr. Gordon, correct? I relied on family reports, which is standard practice for, yes or no, doctor, did you examine him? No. Have you ever had your medical privileges suspended? Brenner paled. There was a misunderstanding in New Jersey several years ago. Shaw produced documents. Your privileges were suspended for providing favorable medical opinions in exchange for payment. Isn't that correct? The charges were, it was complicated. Yes or no? The suspension occurred. How much did Mrs. Gordon pay you for this opinion? Webb objected. Judge Morrison overruled. Answer the question, doctor. $5,000 for evaluation and testimony preparation. The courtroom reacted, murmurs, shifting bodies. Judge Morrison's expression hardened visibly. Shaw continued. So, you accepted $5,000 from someone facing criminal charges to declare her victim incompetent without ever examining him. It's standard expert witness compensation. Your witness, Shaw said, sitting down. The damage was complete. Brenner's credibility destroyed in 5 minutes. Before closing arguments, the courtroom door opened. Detective Craig Holmes entered, accompanied by another officer. He approached the bench, spoke quietly to Judge Morrison. She nodded. Detective Holmes has information relevant to these proceedings. Holmes testified briefly about the investigation's latest developments. Search warrant executed on the Gordon residence yesterday. We recovered Mrs. Gordon's cell phone, previously reported lost. Forensic analysis revealed search history. Undetectable poisons. Ethylene glycol symptoms. How to fake natural death. Elderly heart attack causes. Searches conducted in the 2 weeks before the poisoning incident. Deborah's face drained of color. Holmes continued. Laboratory analysis of T residue confirmed ethylene glycol contamination. Mrs. Gordon had access through antifreeze stored in the garage. We're filing charges today. Attempted murder, conspiracy, reckless endangerment. Judge Morrison looked at Deborah with unmistakable contempt. Additionally, we have testimony from Mrs. Cynthia Reynolds, the unintended victim, confirming she overheard discussions of getting rid of Mr. Gordon before the incident. The judge's gavel came down. Officers, please take Mrs. Deborah Gordon into custody. Deborah stood, panicking. This is insane. I didn't... Mr. Philip Gordon, you're also under arrest for conspiracy and accessory to attempted murder. The courtroom erupted. Officers moved forward with handcuffs. Philip looked at me, mouth working soundlessly. No words came. I watched, expressionless. They'd made their choices. Served me poison. Forged my signature. Tried to have me declared incompetent. Every consequence they now faced, they'd earned. I felt no triumph, just the hollow ache of necessary victory. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the commotion. The guardianship petition is denied. Mr. Abner Gordon is demonstrably competent. Her gavel struck. Emergency eviction order is granted. The Gordons have 48 hours to vacate the property. I stood, gathered my medical files, and walked out of the courtroom. Behind me, Philip called my name. I didn't turn around. 1 week later, Wednesday morning, I sat in the district attorney's office, Center City, Philadelphia, across from Detective Holmes and Assistant DA Rebecca Torres. Torres was mid-40s, sharp features, reputation for prosecuting elder abuse cases aggressively. Mr. Gordon, we need your complete statement for the record, everything from the beginning. I recounted it all, the overheard conversation from the first dinner, the suspicious bank withdrawals I'd discovered, the second dinner invitation, the poison tea with its bitter almond scent, the cup switch, evidence collection after everyone left, the financial fraud discovery. I spoke for 90 minutes without consulting notes, dates, amounts, account numbers, chronological precision. Torres recorded everything, occasionally asking clarification. You're remarkably detailed for someone who experienced attempted murder. Forensic accountant, details are how I've made my living. She nodded, making notes. Both defendants are attempting to negotiate plea agreements. Each is blaming the other. Mrs. Gordon claims it was Mr. Philip Gordon's idea, that he pressured her because of desperation about money. He claims he didn't know about the poison until after his mother-in-law's hospitalization. My expression didn't change. They're both guilty. The evidence proves it. We agree. Torres slid documents across the table. These are their statements. You should know what they're saying. I read. Deborah's version: Philip pressured me constantly. He was desperate about money, said his father was old and wouldn't last long anyway. I went along because I was afraid of him, afraid what he'd do if I refused. Philip's version: I didn't know about the poison. Deborah handled everything, the tea, the planning. I thought we were just having family dinner. When Cynthia got sick, I realized what my wife had done, each throwing the other under the bus, rewriting history, claiming victimhood. I set the papers down. They deserve each other. Holmes added, their attorneys are trying to create reasonable doubt by turning them against each other, standard strategy when multiple defendants face serious charges. Will it work? Not with our evidence. Holmes ticked items off on his fingers. The phone searches for poisons, the forged power of attorney documents, witness testimony from Mrs. Reynolds confirming she overheard discussions about getting rid of you, your documented evidence collection, the toxicology confirming ethylene glycol in the T residue. Torres leaned forward. We're not accepting their deals. We're going to trial with full charges: attempted murder, conspiracy, financial fraud, forgery. We're seeking maximum sentences. 2 days later, Friday afternoon, I met with Shaw to finalize the civil damages lawsuit. He spread documents across his desk. We're filing for $150,000. Breakdown, $47,000 in legal fees incurred so far, $12,000 in medical evaluations and expert testimony, $8,400 in stolen funds via fraudulent transactions. The remainder is compensatory damages for emotional distress and punitive damages for intentional harm. I reviewed the itemized list. Every dollar justified, documented, provable. They don't have $150,000. They don't have $150, Shaw corrected. But we file anyway. The judgment follows them permanently. Garnished wages, seized assets, bankruptcy won't discharge it because it's fraud-related. They'll be paying this debt for the rest of their lives. He continued. We'll file liens against any property they might acquire, attach any future inheritance or windfalls. This judgment becomes a permanent financial anchor. I signed the filing documents. Shaw filed electronically while I watched. Served on both defendants within the hour, he confirmed. The following week, I made strategic phone calls. First, Pennsylvania Real Estate Commission. I'm reporting unethical conduct by licensed realtor Deborah Gordon. She's facing criminal charges for attempted murder and financial fraud against an elderly client, her father-in-law. The complaint triggered automatic investigation. Within days, Deborah received notice. License suspended pending criminal case resolution. Her real estate career ended. Second, I didn't call Philip's employer directly. That would be harassment. Instead, I ensured the criminal court records were public and easily searchable. Someone at Tech Vision Solutions ran a routine background check. The pending charges appeared. Philip was terminated for cause, losing any severance. Shaw handled another task, informing their mortgage lender and creditors about the criminal charges and asset freezes. Within 2 weeks, foreclosure proceedings began. Bankruptcy filings followed, not protection, but documentation of their complete financial collapse. I tracked it all with the same methodical attention I'd once used for fraud investigations. Each falling domino documented, filed, recorded. Friday afternoon, I visited an estate planning specialist, Nathan Price, recommended by Shaw. I'm disinheriting my son completely. Price nodded, unsurprised. Given the circumstances, understandable. Do you have other heirs? No, everything goes to charity. Half to the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Elder Abuse, half to the Forensic Accounting Education Foundation. Price drafted the new will. I read every line carefully. The document was explicit. I, Abner Gordon, being of sound mind and under no duress, specifically disinherit my son, Philip Gordon, and any descendants. This decision is made knowingly and intentionally due to his participation in criminal acts against me, including attempted murder and financial fraud. No ambiguity, no room for legal challenge. I signed, witnessed, and notarized. The previous will? Destroyed, Price confirmed. He fed it through a shredder. The machine made a mechanical grinding sound as it consumed the document. 40 years of planning to leave something for Philip, reduced to confetti in 30 seconds. I felt nothing. Philip stopped being my heir when he became complicit in murder. By month's end, every piece was in position. Criminal trial scheduled, civil judgment filed, professional licenses revoked, will changed, their lives dismantled systematically, legally, irreversibly. I returned to my apartment that evening and opened my laptop to check consulting emails. Life continued, even as I waited for justice to complete its work. 3 weeks later, late August, Thursday morning, I returned to the same courtroom for sentencing, Judge Morrison presiding again. Philip and Deborah stood separately, different public defenders, no longer united even in their defense. The trial had been brief, overwhelming evidence, weak defenses, guilty verdicts on all major charges. Now came consequence. Judge Morrison addressed Deborah first. Mrs. Gordon, you orchestrated a calculated attempt to murder your father-in-law for financial gain. You researched methods, obtained poison, served it deliberately. That your own mother suffered instead doesn't mitigate your intent. She paused, letting that sink in. This court recognizes the particular cruelty of elder abuse by family members. 8 years in state prison for attempted murder. 3 years concurrent for financial fraud and forgery. Deborah swayed slightly, gripping the table. Mr. Philip Gordon. The judge's voice remained stern. You were complicit in planning your father's murder. Your participation, while perhaps less active than your wife's, was knowing and intentional. You betrayed the most fundamental duty, protecting your parent. 4 years in state prison for conspiracy to commit murder and forgery. Philip stared at the floor. Neither looked at me. After criminal sentencing, brief civil hearing, Judge Patterson's civil court reviewed the damages lawsuit. The court finds for plaintiff Abner Gordon, defendants Philip and Deborah Gordon are jointly and severally liable for $150,000 in damages, plus court costs and ongoing legal fees. This judgment is non-dischargeable due to fraud and intentional harm. Shaw leaned toward me. You'll never see that money. They're judgment proof. No assets, no income, incarcerated. I nodded. I know, but it follows them forever. Every job application, every credit check, every attempt to rebuild. Shaw understood. It's not about the money. It's about the permanent record. 3 days later, Sunday morning, an envelope in my mail. Prison return address, Philip's handwriting, still familiar after all these years. I considered not opening it, then did. 3 pages, handwritten, desperate. Dad, I know I can't undo what happened. I was weak. Deborah manipulated me. I should have protected you instead of going along with her plans. I think about it every day. You raised me better than this. I failed you, failed myself. Prison gives me a lot of time to think about who I became and why. I'm asking, begging for forgiveness. Not now, I know it's too soon, but someday. And if you could help with a lawyer for appeal or put some money on my commissary account, I'm still your son. That has to mean something. I read it once. Then again, more slowly, looking for genuine remorse, finding only self-pity and manipulation. Deborah manipulated me, still avoiding responsibility. I'm still your son, leveraging a relationship he destroyed. The appeal for money confirmed it, still trying to extract from me. I stood, walked to my kitchen, methodically tore the letter into small pieces, dropped them in the trash. No response necessary. The following week, I met with a real estate agent. Not Deborah's company, a competitor. I'm selling. I want it done quickly. The house listed at $535,000. Multiple offers within days. Philadelphia market was strong. I accepted $537,000, all cash, closed in 2 weeks. I walked through the empty house one final time. 43 years I'd lived here. Raised Philip in these rooms. Mourned my wife here. Then was invaded. Betrayed. Nearly murdered here. Too many ghosts, both good and bad. The new owners were a young family, excited, planning renovations. Let them create new memories, untainted. I used the proceeds to buy a 2-bedroom apartment in Rittenhouse Square. Walkable, anonymous, safe, smaller space, less maintenance, no history. I furnished it simply. Desk for consulting work, comfortable chair, bookshelves, functional, not nostalgic. My savings remained intact, $280,000 untouched despite their attempts. Add the house sale proceeds, minus the new apartment. I was financially secure. More than that, I was free. No property tying me to the past. No son claiming inheritance rights. No vulnerability to family exploitation. Early September. I sat at my new desk reviewing consulting inquiries. One email caught my attention. Mr. Gordon, I was referred to you by Alan Shaw. I'm 71 years old. My daughter and her husband moved in with me 2 years ago. Recently, I've noticed money missing from my accounts. When I confronted them, they said I must be confused, that I'm forgetting things. They're pressuring me to add my daughter to my bank accounts to help manage my finances. Something feels wrong, but they're family. I don't know what to do. Can you help? I read it twice. The pattern was familiar. Too familiar. Financial exploitation, gaslighting about competency, isolating the victim, positioning for complete control. I'd live this. I replied, I can help. Let's meet this week. Bring any financial statements you have. We'll document everything and determine next steps. You're not confused. Trust your instincts. I scheduled the appointment, then sat back. I'd survived attempted murder and fought back successfully. Now I could use that experience to protect others, to identify the warning signs, to help victims before they got poisoned. Perhaps that was the purpose in all of this. Not just personal justice, but acquiring knowledge to help others escape similar traps. My phone buzzed. The new client confirmed the meeting. I opened a fresh case file folder, labeled it carefully, dated it, began preliminary notes. Outside my window, Philadelphia moved through another afternoon. Traffic, voices, the ordinary sounds of life continuing. I'd survived betrayal, attempted murder, and systematic exploitation. Now, I'd use that survival to help others recognize the warning signs before it was too late. The phone rang. My new client, right on time. I answered, ready to work. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.